Hey. Kodash, Adonai, Elohim, Sabayah, meaning holy, Lord of hosts, Yah, He, Va, He, the four syllables, divine masculine, divine feminine, divine masculine, divine feminine, as a collective whole, creating the tetragrammaton. In the beginning, Elohim said, let us create them in our image, to be a light to the world and a reflection. The chosen seeds, the God seeds, his children, the nine ethers, however you want to put it, as above, so below. The macro prosophist above and the micro prosophist below. And speaking on as above, so below, today's topic is going to be about duality, the two sides, which is also known as polarity, And I'm just going to do reading today. I'm not going to really do no commentating because, I want to break down these 7 principles in separate videos. But today, we're going to go into the Kabbalion. This is not the Kabbalah. It's called the Kabbalion, the 3 initiates. And if you watch the video I did the other day, I think it was the live video, The Calls of Enoch and the 30 Ethers. In there, I actually gave the definition out of the secret book of wisdom, a prophetic record in history, what initiate means, and how it basically means a higher awareness of consciousness and understanding, connected to the inner essence of things. Like I said before, God is eternal, You have to use mentalism, to turn your thoughts into actions, and each action has a reaction. This is how cause and effect works. Duality. Cause and effect. The action and the reaction, but you use your mentalism, by basically, taking your inner essence and manifesting it on the material plane. You manifesting it by materializing it from your mental state. So, no further introduction, we're going to jump right into it. Polarity, Polarity. I'm going to just read it all the way through. Polarity. Everything is dual. Dual meaning duality. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. The great fourth Hermetic principle, the principle of polarity, embodies the truth that all manifested things have 2 sides, 2 aspects, 2 poles, a pair of opposites with manifold degrees between the 2 extremes. The old paradoxes which have ever perplexed the mind of men are explained by an understanding of this principle. Man has always recognized something akin to this principle and has endeavored to express it by such sayings, maxims, and aphorisms as the following. Everything is and isn't at the same time. All truths are but half-truths, but every truth is half false. There are 2 sides to everything. There is a reverse side to every shield, etc., etc. The Hermetic teachings are to the effect that the difference between things seemingly diametrically opposed to each other is merely a matter of degrees. It teaches that the pairs of opposites may be reconciled, and that these theses and antitheses are identical in nature. but different in degree, and that the universal reconciliation of opposites is affected by a recognition of this principle of polarity. The teachers claim that illustrations of this principle may be had on every hand, and from an examination into the real nature of anything. They begin by showing that spirit and matter are but the two poles of the same thing, the intermediate planes being merely degrees of vibration. They show that the all and the many are the same, the difference between merely a matter of degree of mental manifestation. Thus, the law and laws are the two opposite poles of one thing. Likewise, principle and principles, infinite mind and finite mind, these passing on to the physical plane, they illustrate the principle by showing that heat and cold are identical in nature, the difference being merely a matter of degrees. The thermometer shows many degrees of temperature, the lowest pole being called cold, the highest heat. Between these two poles are many degrees of heat or cold. Call them either, you are equally correct. The higher of 2 degrees is always warmer, while the lower is always colder. There is no absolute standard. All is a matter of degree. There is no place on the thermometer where heat ceases and cold begins. It is all a matter of higher or lower vibrations. The very term high and low which we are compelled to use are but poles of the same thing. The terms are relative. So with east and west travel around the world in an eastward direction, you reach a point where it is called west at your starting point, and you return from the westward point, travel far enough north, and you will find yourself traveling south, or vice versa. Light and darkness are poles of the same thing, which with many degrees between them. The musical scale is the same, starting with C. You move upwards until you reach another C, and so on. The differences between the two ends of the board being the same, with many degrees between the two extremes. The scale of color is the same, higher and lower vibrations being the only difference between high violet and low red. Large and small are relative. So are noise and quiet. Hard and soft follow the rule. Likewise, sharp and dull, positive and negative are two poles of the same thing, with countless degrees between them. Good and bad are not absolute. We call one end of the scale good and the other bad, or one end good and the other evil, according to the use of the terms. A thing is less good than the thing higher in the scale, but that less good thing in turn is more good than the thing next below it, and so on, the more or less being regulated by the position on the scale. And so it is on the mental plane. Love and hate are generally regarded as being things diametrically opposed to each other, entirely different, unreconcilable, but we apply the principle of polarity. We find that there is no such thing as absolute love or absolute hate as distinguished from each other. The two are merely terms applied to the two poles of the same thing. Beginning at any point of the scale, we find more love or less hate. As we ascend the scale, and more hate or less love as we descend, this being true no matter from what point, high or low, we may start. There are degrees of love and hate, and there is a middle point where like and dislike become so far faint that it is difficult to distinguish between them. Courage and fear come under the same rule. The pairs of opposites exist everywhere. Where you find one thing, you find its opposite, the two poles. And it is this fact that enables the hermeticist to transmute one mental state into another along the lines of polarization. Things belonging to different classes cannot be transmuted into each other, but things of the same class may be changed. That is, may have their polarity changed. Thus, love never becomes east or west or red or violet, but it may and often does turn into hate, and likewise hate may be transformed into love by changing its polarity. Courage may be transmuted into fear, and the reverse. Hard things may be rendered soft, dull things become sharp, hot things become cold, and so on. The transmutation always being between things of the same kind of different degrees. Take the case of a fearful man. By raising his mental vibrations along the lines of fear, courage, he can be filled with the highest degrees of courage and fearlessness. And likewise, the slothful man may change himself into an active, energetic individual simply by polarizing along the lines of the desired quality. The student who is familiar with the process by which the various schools of mental science, etc., produce changes in the mental state of those following their teaching, may not readily understand the principle underlying many of these changes. When, however, the principle of polarity is once grasped, it is seen that the mental changes are occasioned by a change of polarity, a sliding along the same scale. The hater is readily understood. The change is not in the nature of a transmutation of one thing into another thing entirely different, but is merely a change of degree in the same things, a vastly important difference. For instance, borrowing an analogy from the physical plane, it is impossible to change heat into sharpness, loudness, highness, etc. But heat may readily be transmuted into cold simply by lowering the vibrations. In the same way, hate and love are mutually transmutable, so are fear and courage. But fear cannot be transmuted into love, nor can courage be transmuted into hate. The mental states belong to innumerable classes, each class of which has its opposite pole along which transmutation is possible. The student will readily recognize that in the mental states as well as in the phenomenon of the physical plane, the two poles may be classified as positive and negative, respectively. Thus, love is positive to hate, courage to fear, activity to non-activity, etc., etc. And it will also be noticed that even to those unfamiliar with the principle of vibration, the positive pole seems to be of a higher degree than the negative, and readily dominates it. The tendency of nature is in the direction of the dominant activity of the positive pole. In addition to the changing of the pole, of one's own mental state by the operation of the art of polarization. The phenomenon of mental influence in its manifold phase shows us that the principle may be extended so as to embrace the phenomenon of the influence of one mind over that of another, of which so much has been written and taught of late years. When it is understood, the mental induction is possible, that is, that mental states may be produced by induction from others. This is what I was saying in the other videos. You plant seeds and ideas. You basically unlock people's DNA by your vibrational frequency, your confidence, and your willpower, to be consistent in your pattern, in your nature. Because what seeing is believe. You can rub off a good vibration on a person, and you can rub off bad vibrations on people, and you can also change their day and their mood right then and there just by your vibrational frequency. So the same thing vice versa with good. That's why it's key to understand duality when dealing with mentalism, and understanding how the cause and effect of things are operating around you, and you'll be able better to implement the law, law, statutes, and commandments, laws of cause and effect, the galactic law, universal law of the do's and the don'ts, and all of this deals with, your mentalism and how you materialize it, and that's what it means by mental induction. It's possible that mental states may be produced by induction from others. Then we can readily see how a certain rate of vibration or polarization of a certain mental state may be communicated to another person and his polarity. Why do you think every video I always break things down into three different meanings of the same thing? Whether you could call them translations, or, just a different outlook, because a lot of people are biased, they're one-sided. But one-sided ain't going to get you nowhere, because you're dealing with partiality. That's what a lot of these institutions, and belief systems, they won't teach you, that everything deals with duality. There's two sides to everything. You can't just have one side without the other, It's going to have, a karmatic bonus on you of cause and effect, and it's going to affect you in the long run, Just like the Most High said in Revelation, being that they were nor hot nor cold, I am going to spit them out. Because you're going to be unbalanced if you don't have duality, and you don't understand the two sides, the divine masculine, the divine feminine, how your spirit works with your physical body, which is matter, and how it all, goes together in correspondence, corresponds with each other, and how it harmonizes with nature, just like the cosmos, constellations, planetary alignments, they vibrate in duality, as above, so below, with nature. That's above, nature is below, Mother Nature, Ana, Chokma, Mother Wisdom, the nature of things, the nature of you. Now back to that. Person in his polarity, in that class of mental states thus change. It is along this principle that the result of many of the mental treatments are obtained. For instance, a person is blue, melancholy, I never heard of this word before, melancholy, and full of fear. So it has something to do with fear. When I don't understand the word, I always look how the sentence ends, so I can identify what it is defining, by the characteristics of the sentence. That's why I always say it's always key to follow the consistency and the patterns of everything, The stuff you don't know, you can internally figure it out by just using tools within your mentalism. A mental science brings his own mind up to the desired vibration by his trained will, thus obtaining the desired polarization in his own case, then produces a similar mental state in the other by induction, the result being that the vibrations are raised and the person polarizes towards the positive end of the scale instead towards the negative, and his fear and other negative emotions are transmuted to courage and similar positive mental states. A little study will show you that these mental changes are nearly all along the lines of polarization, the change being one of the degree rather than of kind. A knowledge of the existence of this great hermetic principle will enable the student to better understand his own mental state. Say that again. To better understand his own mental state. It's key to understand yourself, your driving force, what causes you to do the things you do, and how you reflect your intent on people, places, and things. Because there's a cause and effect. This is the deeper knowledge, as we're going from this 3D, 4D dimensional state in lower vibration, the ascension and the rapture to the higher self, you have to know these things, because you are dealing on once the plasma, the energy, the ether of the sun, which I just bought another book based on all the ethers, and it's basically confirming everything that I was already talking about. And I also got another one, right here. And look, as I was going through it got all the Hebrew sephirots, because this knowledge is very key. All the ancients and, our ancestors, forefathers, however you want to call it, they knew this information. They knew how numbers work. And when I read the Bible, I always follow the pattern of numbers, how everything is done on cycles of 7, or, because it's very key. What other people call a ritual, these things have always been done because, the higher knowledge of yourself lets you know that these things have to be done under this specific constellation, at this specific time, and everything, when you speak something into existence, you have to say it more than once, until it's believed, and you work the emotion up that, raises the vibrational frequency within yourself. That's when you will feel your blood flow, increase, your mood will change, because now you are saying something so confidently you believe in. That's how the Kundalini rises within you. A knowledge of the existence of the great hermetic principle will enable the student to better understand his own mental states and those of others. It's key. Got to know what you're up against, Like I said before, you got to know how the workers of iniquity work in order to counterbalance it, so you can overcome and not be overtaken. He will see that these states are all matters of degrees, and seeing thus, he will be able to raise or lower the vibration at will to change his mental poles, and thus be master of his own mental states, instead of being their servant and slave. You see a lot of people that's slaves to other people's ideology and their force, instead of using your own force and being controlled of the dynamics of everything in the atmosphere around you, But like I said, you still have to have righteous intent. You have to do everything with a purpose, because for every cause, there's an effect. And we just read about duality, how everything has its opposite and how everything works together and harmonizes. And by his own knowledge, he will be able to aid his fellows intelligently by the appropriate methods change the polarity when the same is desirable. We advise all students to familiarize themselves with this principle of polarity for a correct understanding of the same will throw light on many difficult subjects. Just by knowing this principle alone in your mental state will help you comprehend and understand things and discern things beyond others' comprehension, you know. That's why this knowledge is kept secret and hidden, you know, because it's only for the collective, you know. And very few people understand how to work it. But this specific knowledge of these 7 principles will activate the God particle in you and put you in control, you know, make you the head and not the tail, you know, make you the leader and not the follower, because everything physical is being controlled eternally by the mind. The mind is being the consciousness, which is really symbolically the heart, because the heart is the life producer, is pushing the plasma and the energy all throughout your body to all your other eternal organs, and all of your organs are working together in harmony, in duality to each other, you know. It's very key to know these things, and that's out of the Kabbalion. And what I've been doing every day, I've been going back to the gym, right? And as I go to the gym, I read chapters out of each book in between reps. You know, this is how you increase spiritually and physically at the same time. And what I do is I memorize things. When I might be running or something, I'm reciting it over and over and over in my head. Then I'm trying to understand. Understand is what we was taught, but now I'm grasping the concept of innerstand, because I understand everything is eternal. You know, it's very eternal that you understand these, and that's what mentalism is. It's an inner standing. You know, understandings come from the physical world because they're understood because they're not understood. You get what I'm saying? You know, they're understood because they're not looking at it in duality. They're looking at it just in the physical, materialized world without, you know, the understanding of spirit, you know, in the ether, in the energy that's all around you, you know. You meditate long enough, if you stare at the sun, you know you'll be in this daze and you'll see all of these particles floating around you. They look like dust particles and just little flashing energy lights. That's the ether. That's the breath of life. That is all around you all day. And a lot of people can't see it, but you know, I've been seeing it all my life. I didn't understand what it is, but I definitely understand what it is now. I did understand because I looked at things on a physical level. I just thought, oh, maybe I'm dizzy. Maybe my eyes are heavy. And no, when you see things like that, that means that you are tapping into something. You know, people been doing it all their life, but they never understand what it really was. Only what people that understand was telling them. You know, or just thinking about it just in the physical aspect. You know, without the eternal part of duality. So that's today's lesson, you know. And as I'm going through these different principles, and I'm going to break a video down on each of the 7, you know, I'm rememorizing them day by day. Just like I memorized all the chakras and what they mean. I remembered the Anabakowatch prayer. I did all of that by, you know, increasing spiritually and physically, always while I'm working out or doing something productive. I'm multitasking things, and that's the best way to memorize things while your blood is flowing. You know, a lot of times I don't think about the pain I'm feeling by exercising. I'll get up on the treadmill and act like I'm in a Rocky Balboa movie. You know, oh, this is a fight, I gotta get to the fight. But at the same token, I'm using mentalism and the stuff to keep reciting it, because it's the fight to get all of this stuff down pat to where as though I can memorize it, and the quicker I memorize it, the better I can explain it, because I understand it and how it works in the duality of things. Salah, y'all bless. I'll see y'all the next time. I'm out.